Volunteers and search parties. These are two words that you've heard a lot together in most true crime cases. Well, young Anna was also a volunteer, along with a handful of others, and she was scanning a vast, barren land in Marmari. She was on a mission. The area of interest was dry and never-ending. The June sun was blazing down on people walking in this remote area, poking with their sticks, trying to find what they were looking for. It was nothing but sand, dried-up twigs, and branches as far as the eye could see. Maybe a tree or two in the distance, but other than that, there was zero shade. Anna reached a nearby tree, surrounded by twigs and branches. But this wasn't any ordinary tree. It was the same tree where a witness saw a man, a visibly panicked man, carrying a load of thorny branches. That too, at a very odd hour. While Anna was poking around in the mass of branches, the air changed direction, and that changed everything. Anna was hit with that undeniable rancid smell. She called her partner, and everything after that was a blur. As the pile was removed, though, they saw it. A woman's body was recovered. She'd been so badly wounded that she couldn't even be identified, not even by her fingerprints. Welcome to True Crime Stories. I'm your host, Ty Knotts, and I post new true crime documentaries every single week. So if you're interested in simple, classic true crime, you've come to the right place, because that's pretty much all we do here. So be sure to subscribe. It's totally free, and it just keeps you up to date with all my future videos. Anastasia Patricia Rubinska was born in 1996 in Poland. She had a brother named Adrian, who defined Anastasia as a girl with loads of dreams. She loved traveling, and it was her dream to eventually travel the world. But one of her other dreams was to become a model. Now, Anastasia certainly had a shot, but it was easier said than done, and she had a long road ahead of her before she could burst out onto the runway and be on every billboard. So in the meantime, Anastasia went to high school, graduated, and then enrolled in a hairdressing school in Poland. During her time in hairdressing school, Anastasia landed a couple of small modeling jobs, and she was living her dream to a small extent. She traveled frequently to different countries because she was a hotel worker in different five-star restaurants and resorts across the globe. Now, I don't really understand what specifically her job entailed or how this all worked out, but it required a lot of travel, and this was something that Anastasia was incredibly excited about. Anastasia's dad, Andrei, defined his daughter as kind and friendly, but she was the type of person to blindly trust anyone and thought that there is no such thing as bad people. Now, although this is an amazing quality to have in a person, this is exactly what tragically led us here today. Anastasia had a bit of a rebellious streak in her teen years, and she would do things that would make her parents worried. But what teenage kid hasn't driven their parents close to a heart attack at least once, if not more? Anastasia and her boyfriend, Mikhail, or Michael depending on how you want to pronounce it, met each other when they were both teenagers. Well, that was then, and here they were, now 13 years later, still going strong. They were literally the perfect couple. They also shared the same dream of traveling together, so they made it their life mission to see as much of the world as they could together. Michael and Anastasia were inseparable. They were even considering starting their lives together as a married couple, but they hadn't quite made that commitment just yet. It was May of 2023 that Anastasia and Michael took the leap and packed their bags for Greece. They wanted to work somewhere else to make more money so that they could start the next chapter of their lives, whether it was buy a place together or get married. Well, the couple settled on the island of Kos, Greece. They started working at a five-star hotel in Marmari, which is a very famous tourist town in Greece. Anastasia worked as a hotel restaurant hostess, but she'd only been working there for about a month before tragedy struck. One day she disappeared and was never seen again. At least, not alive. It was the evening of June 12, 2023, and it was a regular day for Anastasia at the hotel. She got dressed in her work uniform and worked her shift at the hotel restaurant. Unfortunately, during her shift, she burnt her hand really badly. She was in a lot of pain, but she finished her shift, and all day she hadn't eaten anything. Michael tried to make her eat something, but she just wasn't in the mood, and she wanted to get some alcohol to end the night. At some point, Anastasia was done with her shift, but Michael was still at work, and they had made plans to meet up at a local bar for a little post-work date. Anastasia told Michael that she was stepping out for a bit to buy some alcohol, and he didn't think much of it. The couple would constantly go out to local stores to buy alcohol, either together or alone at times, so it wasn't anything new. But this time, Anastasia sadly wouldn't return. Throughout her shift, Michael was receiving text after text from Anastasia. She was updating him on what she was doing, where she was, and things like that. Michael learned that Anastasia was out somewhere having drinks with another person since Michael was still at work. After that, at around 10:30 p.m., Michael asked if she needed him to come and pick her up. Anastasia then sent him her location and said that she wanted him to come get her because she didn't feel safe. Now keep in mind that Michael was still at work at this point. It would take him quite some time to get to her. But it turned out he didn't need to, because someone else stepped up and was going to give Anastasia a ride home on his motorcycle. When Michael caught word of this update minutes later, this immediately left him on edge. He didn't want Anastasia to accept any favors from a stranger because, well, stranger danger. But Anastasia, being the kind and naive person she was, believed that no one had any reason to harm her. Michael tried multiple times to stop Anastasia from going with this random stranger and wait for him instead, but she said that it was fine. Michael couldn't get a hold of her for a long time after this. Sometime later, Michael's phone chimed again, and this time Anastasia sent him a location. Then another, and then another. And then Anastasia went completely radio silent. There were no more texts, no more calls, nothing. 3 locations in the span of a few minutes really put Michael into panic mode, and he immediately alerted the police as well as Anastasia's family back home. This was really weird for everyone. Michael knew that Anastasia wasn't safe out there, and those texts of her not feeling safe, then followed by 3 different location messages, and even a message that said everything was under control, left Michael feeling very uneasy. The Greek investigators immediately opened up a missing person investigation, and luckily they had a lot of information to help this case along. But time was quickly running out. Anastasia's text messages did leave a sinister undertone, but they weren't enough to pinpoint exactly where she was. So the police had no choice but to comb through the surveillance footage of the place where Anastasia was supposed to be. It was a local supermarket, and sure enough, CCTV footage showed Anastasia by the fence, eating some snacks and drinking some wine. At that point, she was alone, but when the investigators checked the footage further, it showed that sometime later, Anastasia was joined by not 1, not 2, and not 3, but 5 men. At first glance, these men looked like they were locals, and they joined Anastasia to have a good time. Now, different cultures do different things, so was this really all that weird? I don't really know, but it definitely feels a bit strange. This situation was also corroborated by several witnesses, and they saw the men and Anastasia at around 8:30 p.m. chatting up a storm. 2 hours later, Anastasia sent that worrying text about being drunk and in danger, and that she needed Michael to come get her. It's so frightening to imagine Anastasia alone and vulnerable in a place surrounded by strange men. I mean, it's no surprise that she wasn't feeling safe. When the police checked even more CCTV footage around this area, this was when they noticed something. And right away, their blood ran cold. Remember that text Anastasia sent to Michael, saying that she would get a lift from a random person on his motorcycle? Well, she was seen leaving with one of the 5 men on the back of a motorcycle. So every piece of this puzzle was fitting together perfectly. But this revelation was not good, because the investigators knew that Anastasia was in trouble, and they needed to figure out where she was, and fast. The police immediately got to work, and they quickly figured out that the 5 men who were with Anastasia on that fateful evening were illegal immigrants from Bangladesh and Pakistan. Upon further inquiry from locals and witnesses around the area, a shopkeeper was able to identify the man who offered Anastasia a lift. He was a Bangladeshi man named Salahuddin S. Now, there's not a lot of details about this Salahuddin guy. We don't even know his last name. But what we do know is that he is a very shady guy, and Anastasia was in this guy's company not long ago, and now she's missing. The shopkeeper told the investigators that Salahuddin had been a resident of Kos for many years now. He worked in housing estates, but he was very recently unemployed. To make matters worse, the detectives were finally able to find tons of criminal history against this guy. Now, we don't know what it was specifically, but I think you can safely assume that Salahuddin is not a guy you would trust your life with, even in broad daylight. So why did Salahuddin approach Anastasia? Did the other men have something to do with Anastasia's disappearance? And most importantly, where is she now? The police had to get answers to all of these questions, and within no time, the 5 men, including Salahuddin, were on their radar. You would think that tracking these 5 men down in Kos would be hard for the police, but luckily it wasn't, and within hours, these men, who were the last people to have been seen with Anastasia, were brought to the police station to be questioned. The police had a very strong feeling that these men had something to do with Anastasia's disappearance, obviously. And when they saw the men in the flesh, let's just say their suspicions were heightened even more, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. First, the detectives asked the men if they were with Anastasia on the evening of June 12th, and to everyone's surprise, the men admitted approaching her and chatting with her. According to the men, they noticed that she was very out of it at the bar, and she looked visibly intoxicated. They were just being good Samaritans and helped her get home safely, and after their good deed, they simply left. But the police were far from convinced. First of all, if Anastasia were home, she wouldn't have been reported missing by her boyfriend. She was still very clearly missing at that point. Second, and this was the detail that left the investigators feeling even more suspicious, but Salahuddin had scratches and injuries all over his face and arms, and another man had noticeable scratches on his nose. This likely meant one thing: a struggle had taken place. Even though the men swore up and down that the scratches were just injuries from an unexplained accident a few days ago, there was no fooling the police. A woman had gone missing. These 5 men were the last people to see her. She rode with one of these men on his motorcycle, and now 2 of the 5 men had bizarre injuries on their body consistent with the struggle. I'm sure you can put all this together. But the detectives couldn't arrest these men just because they had their suspicions. They needed more evidence. But before letting the men go, DNA samples were taken by the police, and the men were still considered persons of interest in Anastasia's disappearance. In the meantime, Anastasia's loved ones were incredibly worried for her. She had just started her new life in Greece, and now she was gone. Having a young woman go missing is terrifying, but on another continent and having no contact whatsoever is just a different level of anxiety and fear. The investigators were still conducting searches for Anastasia, both ground and aerial, and they even used sniffer dogs to aid in the investigation. But after days, there were just no signs of Anastasia anywhere. The police were able to track down her phone, though. Through cell phone tower and location data, it was found that Anastasia's phone was active until 11:30 p.m. the same night that she went out for drinks. And after that, the cell towers didn't receive any more signals from her phone. Her last known location was actually 5 kilometers away from the location that she shared with her boyfriend. But the investigators were still relentless in their pursuit of finding her. Even though she wasn't found yet, the detectives did find something, but it left everyone feeling even more terrified for Anastasia. See, in a vacant building near Marmari, the police, joined by locals, were able to find a cell phone, and it tragically was confirmed to be Anastasia's. The SIM card had been removed, the GPS services were disabled, and all of the data on the phone had been wiped. There was no call history, messages, or even any pictures on the phone. Even though it was a step in the right direction, everyone was now dreading the worst. Anastasia was missing, sure, but now only her phone was found, and this could not be good. The search for Anastasia was massive. The investigators asked for help from the public, and lots of volunteers came forward to help out in looking for her. But the search for Anastasia came to a screeching halt 6 days into her disappearance, when a volunteer named Anna made a harrowing discovery. On June 18th, the search was focused on the Tagaki area, where there were salt marshes and expansive lands. Anna scoped the area around a big tree, where she saw unusual heaps of straw. When she poked the mass with her cane, that was when she knew that something was terribly wrong. She called the rest of the volunteers and the police over, and as the straw was removed, a plastic bag came into sight. Everyone was dreading opening that bag up, but when they did, they were left feeling horrified, disgusted, and shocked. The disrobed body of a woman was found in the plastic bag, and it didn't take a genius to realize that the perpetrator had taken the woman's life with his bare hands. The investigators also noticed something very eerie and unsettling. The murderer had clearly tried to make the body unrecognizable, and there wasn't even a way to identify the victim by fingerprints. And why? Well, because the body didn't have any. What Anastasia went through in the hours before her death was unreal. This innocent young woman did nothing to deserve any of this, other than being in the wrong place at the wrong time. It should go without saying, once the police recovered the body and brought it in, it was confirmed to be Anastasia. She'd been missing for less than a week, and now her case went from that of a missing person investigation to a full-blown homicide. Anastasia's passing was very tragic. She endured the worst of God knows what for who knows how long, and what makes it worse is she was also taken advantage of, which is just heartbreaking. Her family was struck to the core when they received this devastating news. The pain that their daughter had endured was immeasurable. Someone had ruthlessly and brutally attacked their kind, optimistic, and bright young girl, and that too in a place where she was about to start a new life for herself. As tragic as Anastasia's passing was, the detectives now had what they needed: evidence. Evidence to finally convict whoever did this to her. And this was also when the investigators found something out. Something that was about to blow the case wide open and seal the fate of one particular man. The area where Anastasia's body was found was oddly close to a significant person's home. 1 kilometer away to be exact. And if you guessed it was the home of Salahuddin, then you'd be absolutely right. This made the police even more certain that Salahuddin was the one, or at least one of the men, responsible for Anastasia's tragic and harrowing passing. And now they had to put handcuffs on this monster and make him pay for what he did to Anastasia. With the discovery of Anastasia's body, the investigators wasted no time arresting Salahuddin on suspicion of murder. This time, Salahuddin's story changed, which is classic suspect behavior. Salahuddin forgot all about helping a drunk woman get home, and he said that he and Anastasia got intimate with each other at his apartment that night. Even though his story had changed completely from before, he still denied fatally harming Anastasia and swore that he knew nothing about her demise. Well, that was until the detectives searched Salahuddin's apartment. There, they managed to recover strands of blonde hair, a blouse that was covered in red stains, and an orange sweatshirt in his apartment. Sadly, the hair and stains on the blouse positively identified as Anastasia's DNA. She was in Salahuddin's apartment, and things got violent. If you add the scratches and injuries on Salahuddin as well as the marks on his friend's face into the mix, then you can tell that Anastasia fought for her life until the very end. But if there's even a sliver of doubt in anyone's mind that Salahuddin didn't drive Anastasia to her untimely end, then this next bit is sure to convince you. When Salahuddin's phone was confiscated after his arrest, his search history sent chills down the officers' spines. Salahuddin had searched for disturbing things such as how to remove data from a phone, how to confuse the police, and how to make a body impossible to identify. If that doesn't scream guilty, I don't know what will. But there's more. When the detectives searched Salahuddin's apartment, they found a plane ticket to Italy. None of his friends or even his roommates knew that he was leaving. And get this, the date of the departure was the same date that he was arrested. This man very nearly got away. Naturally, he was taken to court, and Salahuddin pleaded not guilty. At trial, the prosecution believed that Salahuddin managed to lure Anastasia into his home and subjected her to the worst kind of torture. We don't know if the rest of Salahuddin's minions were involved in this, but it is highly possible and highly likely that they were, if you consider the scratches on the other guy's nose. Anastasia fought for her life, but she was unsuccessful, and in the end her life was taken animalistically and her body was disposed of near the Tagaki Beach area. On December 6th of 2024, Salahuddin was found guilty of manslaughter with intent, and he was sentenced to life in prison. At his sentencing, Anastasia's dad, Andrei, spoke to the press and said, quote, "This punishment will not bring Anastasia back, but he got what he deserved. May he never leave prison again, and may he never hurt anyone again." The disappearance and murder of Anastasia was local and international news for a long time. It made women all over the world fearful for their lives, and everyone was enraged that a man with a criminal history was allowed to walk the picturesque and touristy streets of Kos freely. As far as we know, it was only Salahuddin that was sentenced for Anastasia's murder. Since this case has very little available information, it's hard to say if any of the other men were convicted of Anastasia's murder or if they were even proven to be an accomplice in it. Salahuddin's sentencing was a bittersweet moment for her family, though. At one point, her brother Adrian demanded that he get 10 minutes alone with this assailant who took the life from his sister, so that he could, quote, "finish him." Although no one condones this type of behavior, I think we can all see where this hurt and fury was coming from. Adrian was blindsided when he found out that his sister was gone. She lost her life for no reason at all. She didn't even provoke anyone. She was out alone and vulnerable, yes, but does anyone go out looking for trouble willingly? She just wanted to have a drink after a really bad day at work. I just hope that Anastasia's family is moving on from this, well, tragedy doesn't even begin to explain what happened to her. This was literal hell. Anastasia left the world after 27 short years, and she had her whole life ahead of her. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. I wanted to give a special thank you to a couple channel members, including Defender of Autism, Nathaniel Hooper, Tracy Ritchie, and Julie Johnson. If you also want to become a member of the channel, you'll gain access to new videos days or weeks before they're uploaded to the public, and it is a great way to support the channel and help out, and I appreciate all of you that have decided to do that. If you want to join, you can click that big join button. It's not up there actually, it's down there. If you want to join, you can click that join button or find the link down in the description. And don't forget, True Crime Stories t-shirts are also now available. You can grab one of those from the link down in the description as well. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case I covered. That's what's up there. And, and don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free, just keeps you up to date with all my future videos. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.